Welcome back to HomeTeams Talk, where caring is the cause. I'm Shayla, president of the Bray Applications and co-creator of HomeTeams, and I'm joined by Steve, our HomeTeams founder and head coach. How are you this morning?
I'm good.
Good. You got some good news for us today?
Yeah, actually,
sunshine?
I was just trying to, sometimes it's really revolutionary news, and sometimes it's news of things, this is what I love, is when it's things that we've had forever, but all of a sudden they find out that they're so much more effective or effective in different ways. The first one, which was crazy, and it's interesting to me because I've had skin cancer a few times, and a lot of people do, but lidocaine. They found that lidocaine actually, and it has to do with the bitter taste. I don't know, it's a molecule that makes you have bitter taste. Anyway, it releases that, and it causes cancer to die. And it's like super effective for skin cancers. They say throat and neck and face cancers especially. But anyways, this whole new process. Obviously, it's probably already effective to a certain degree, but now they're looking at how to take it and make it even more effective. And they think it could even lead to a whole kind of new class of drugs that could be effective on cancer.
Interesting.
So that was just cool. There's those all the time, things like that. Like there's a new one on zinc for lungs. We always knew lungs were greatly improved by taking zinc, but now they found that there's a new way of releasing zinc, and when they do, there's a couple diseases there's one disease, I can't remember what the initials of it is, but it's not a real common lung disease, but the average life expectancy is like 3 to 5 years. But when they use zinc and they do it the way they're doing it, they're healing it.
Wow.
So just these things like that have been around forever, and then all of a sudden someone repurposes it, finds some new way to adapt it, and boom.
Was it a fluke, or were they actually trying to research it?
The lidocaine, I guess they've kind of known to a certain degree that it was possible, that they've found that it caused healing quicker and some things like that, but so it's not like brand new. And then again, like zinc, we all knew that you take zinc for lung problems. So
cool.
Kind of, but somebody takes it and goes to a whole nother level.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the sunshine.
Yeah.
Today we have the privilege of welcoming two incredible individuals onto the Home Team Talks podcast, Verna and Javier Ruiz, parents to the remarkable Roman. They're here to share their journey as caregivers and advocates for their son's recovery.
Well, Pasco family is at their son's bedside in a Utah hospital after the young athlete went into cardiac arrest just Saturday.
Spring break at Utah State University. Roman was training for the decathlon on the outdoor track when a witness noticed something was wrong. 35 minutes. That's how long Verna Ruiz says it was before first responders revived her son after an unexpected cardiac arrest.
Through their experiences navigating Roman's recovery process, Verna and Javier have discovered the power of community support and alternative therapies in promoting healing and restoration. With a deep sense of love and commitment, Verna and Javier have embraced their roles as caregivers, offering unwavering support to Roman as he continues on his path to recovery. Today, they share their insights, wisdom, and experiences, offering a glimpse into the remarkable journey of hope, resilience, and determination. I'm really excited to have you guys here this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Your guys' story is so inspirational, I think, to everybody.
Yeah, it's a story that we tell over and over again, and there's, I don't know that Roman realizes how much that he's inspired other people, but there's some of the other fantastic stories around here. We're all inspired by the Roman story. Right?
That's true.
It's interesting when you get some of the people that have started, let's say in the last year or so, or a year and a half, and now we watch them have incredible success, and they will talk about how inspiring Roman was.
That's awesome.
So let's take us back to the beginning, for the listeners that maybe don't know Roman's story. What was the beginning of his journey?
Want me to go?
Yep.
Right. Well, we have 5 kids. Roman's number 4 of 5, and of course they're all awesome in their own regard, but we're a little bit biased in that kind of way. But Roman has always been a gifted athlete ever since he was a young kid. He won junior national championships and being a decathlete. for Junior Olympics as a sophomore. Track and football throughout high school. Was a state champion in track for pole vault, and ended up getting a scholarship actually from that. And so his trajectory from an athletic standpoint has been really good, really stellar and stuff. So after high school, he served a 2-year mission for our church in Italy. But after that, he was able to start schooling at Utah State University and kind of start really the beginning of his track career. And he was off to a really good start, you know, in his freshman year. He already landed on 2 or 3 of the top 10 all-time records at Utah State for different events, you know, because he's a decathlete, he does 10 events. And so his sophomore year, he was really looking forward to making a real big dent in that, because he just figured freshman year was kind of getting the rust off, and after taking 2 years off and everything. And so sophomore year was going to be his breakout year. And so indoor season came and went, and he was starting to prepare for outdoor season. And it was spring break, and he was practicing by himself. Roman's very committed, as you probably already know by watching him in here. So he would take that time to, you know, take advantage to craft, you know, his skills and everything. And since it was spring break, there's nobody else on the track field that day when he went to go work out. And he was just warming up, and there was one individual that showed up to do laps around the track. And his name is John Bailey. He's a retired physician of all things. So I really believe it was a miracle that he was there. But they said hi and greeted each other. But by the time John got to the opposite end of the track and looked back, he noticed Roman was on the ground. And he thought, well, that's kind of weird. You know, just said good morning to him. He was just warming up. And John makes his way back to the other part of the track, and he sees that Roman's still down on the ground, face down. And they could see that he was actually kind of bleeding, kind of foaming at the mouth. So he knew immediately something was wrong. So he rushed over to where Roman was and immediately called 911, got help on the way, and then started doing CPR. And from that point there, Roman's life changed big time, and as did ours, you know. And it's crazy kind of thinking about it, since it's been a little bit over 4 years, but it's had a huge impact on our lives, certainly Roman's more than anybody. But long story short is he was unresponsive for 35 minutes. So it's just a miracle he's alive. And he ended up in the hospital at Ogden, Utah for about 2 months. And we made our way back up home, and then we started continued therapies here, and then eventually met up with the crew here at Pacific Clinic, and we're still here. We're still working.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of talked about it. He's obviously kind of the end of your empty nester. You're kind of getting to the end of that's a pretty big life change. I mean, he would have been early 20s, I'm assuming, based off of kind of your timeline there. That, I'm sure, for him, and knowing him now, has been a huge dramatic change. But even for you guys, I mean, how do you prepare for something like that? How did you prepare for that when it happened?
Well, there is no preparing for that.
There is no preparing. That's true.
I will say this, though, is that, you know, when you're a parent, you know, and anybody who's been blessed by being able to be a parent, you know, because I understand not everybody can, so I want to be sensitive to that. But when you're a parent, you're always a parent. When you're a dad, you're always a dad. And so sometimes when I talk to people about how hard it's been in, you know, this journey and experiences, I always tell people that when you're a dad, you find that other gear you didn't know you had, you know? And so that's kind of how I've been able to kind of deal with it and cope with it. It's just like, well, you know, I'm still dad, and I still got to take care of my son.
Well, I think it was a fortunate time. Like, there was one younger than him who was just graduating at the time, and we were looking forward to being empty nesters. But I think it was a great time that we were able to focus solely on Roman, and
for
put
sure.
everything into that. So it was kind of like good timing.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that amazed me, like we all say how amazing Roman is, but was you guys. Yeah. It's like you know, when you guys came to us, I remember it was like month 8, I think, after the incident. And I remember just being scared, even talking to Cassidy and talking to any expert I could find out there about the fact that, you know, they say like 85% of your return happens in the first 6 months. And so a lot of places will say you can't get any better after that. And for you guys to walk in the door and for us to be able to say, okay, let's give this a shot, let's go for it. But you guys don't understand, I'm sure you don't understand, how many people are like, well, you know, it is what it is. And they have that, it is what it is. They're still great parents. And that's not saying they're not great parents, but they're ready to accept what's going on. And you guys walked in, and all of us as a team were like, let's give this a shot. But you guys just say, yeah, let's give it a shot, and I think we can get there. I mean, and that encouragement from you guys, and then, you know, and Javier, you were awesome, but Verna, you were here every single day with him and helping him fight through that. And that's just not, that's like a super parent. That's a superhero. And I hope Roman understands how important that was. And I think of all the stuff that we tried to do, but the truth of the matter is that the height of if you take everything and made him get better, it was you guys.
Well, you know, it's amazing how many different things fell into place. You know, Verna talked about a little bit ago about the timing of things, and I really feel like God's hands has been at play here at every stage. I work for the state, so I had a lot of sick leave and vacation time stored up. So I was able to take quite a bit of time off that when it happened. I mean, like 6 months.
And even it was COVID. So kind of like COVID was helpful because
shut everything down.
We couldn't work. So we didn't have to worry about work, and we were able to, you know, just do whatever we needed to do in that beginning when it was, you know, harder. So it kind of like worked out in a funny kind of way.
Yeah, and then it was Verna being self-employed and, you know, having her own schedule and can make everything work. So it's been, everything's lined up just right. Really
I mean,
has.
like even I was self-employed, but when we did have to go back to work, I did have to change my schedule at first, and that was hard to do, but we just did it because that's what we had to do. But then it just, you know, slowly things changed and evolved, and I'm kind of back to my regular schedule now, and it was helpful with, well, COVID forced Javier to start working from home, so that was a big help too. So just all these little tender mercies along the way really have helped out. We felt very fortunate with that.
One of the other things that I thought was wonderful with you guys, and we've learned a lot, matter of fact, we changed our whole system because of this, is that, you know, if you remember the first time we tried to do a therapy with Roman, and I had a couple like experts around the country on video trying to help us. Remember that?
I remember.
We got off that video, and those experts were like, I don't know how you're going to help him, because remember, he just couldn't even, you take one step and you want to get off. But once we started, we were like, okay, let's go. We're going to do this battle. We're going to go. But where you guys changed our system a little bit was you guys also were working out. You guys were also trying to be healthy. And we changed our format that we do around here, is that caregivers get to come in for free when they're bringing somebody into regenerative.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because of that.
Yeah.
Because we started realizing, which, you know, I guess we should have known, but I don't think a lot of people do realize, is that when you're a caregiver, like as soon as you find out this happened to Roman, or this just happened to your wife, or whatever it is, you focus on that battle. But to do that battle, you got to battle. And it's like, for us to realize that this is the greatest time in our life as caregivers. This is the greatest things that can happen to us. And it really is true. You know, I said to people, and sometimes they're kind of like, man, I don't know about that. But it is. It's a great time. But you've got to take it on and battle yourself. And you got to get healthy, and you have to stay healthy, and you have to, like you say, put your own oxygen mask on first. And that was something we registered watching you guys, because that's what was so effective. It wasn't just, here, Roman working out. He's working out, and Verna's in the other room, or Javier's in the other room, or working out with him, and, you know, all the things that went on.
For sure, that was, I mean, I recognized that in the beginning too. And I even, when Roman was in the hospital, I had read about that too, like how the caregiver needs to be healthy. And when he was in the hospital, you know, we were there all day long, but every morning I would do this 7-minute workout. Like, that's about all I had time for, but it made a difference. It helped, even that 7 minutes that I did that. And then coming here, I was honestly throughout my life never a regular exerciser or a regular gym goer, but now I am. So I'm kind of like it worked out good for me too. You know, eventually at first I had to help Roman, you know, and I didn't get to do too much for myself, but you know, then slowly it turned into like he's doing his thing and like I'm doing my thing, and I love coming. You know, it's my break and keeps me healthy.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's keeping the caregiver needs to stay healthy.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think when you were talking about the superhero side of things, I think the one thing that came to mind is the belief picture that we have up there. And I think you guys were a lot of inspiration behind that too, because we talk about purpose all the time, but a lot of times in order to have purpose, we have to have kind of a motivating factor. And I think it's the belief from other people, right? That they believe that we can do it. And I think Roman, deep down in his heart, knew that he could get better because of you guys, because of the team supporting him. And it was sheer willpower and that drive that really has helped him, I think, in a lot of it, too.
I think so, and I think, you know, I've said this before, but it just kind of baffles my mind, is that when you're talking to somebody, let's back up. If you go to a doctor, you walk into a doctor and the doctor says, okay, you got cancer and you're stage 4. You're probably, you know, nothing's good is going to happen. They start giving that kind of lecture. Inside your own heart and mind, your immediate response is, I knew it. And even to the point, like, there's this guilt, like, I always knew I wasn't good enough. I knew that, you know, I was not right for this world, whatever it is. All these horrible thoughts start coming into your mind when you think you're going down or you weren't good enough. But that doesn't take a lot of faith. It's just like instantly that's where you go. If the doctor says, okay, you have stage 4 cancer, but we have this incredible treatment, this is what we're going to do, I think you can beat this. Immediately, the response is not, I knew it. It's, do you think so? Right. Do you really think we can beat this? And then also you have to take this like step up to faith to say, all right. And sometimes it's based on whether you believe the guy in the white coat or the research or what he said, but sooner or later, I mean, you start with that, right? You do start with, you're trying to gather from the coach or the doctor or whoever it is who's telling you these things. But sooner or later, it's got to come inside. And then it's got to be like, okay, I believe it. I believe I can get better. I believe I can fight this. And then you see incredible story after incredible story. As soon as that happens, when they really start to get a belief that they can fight what's going on, then you start seeing the miracles. But it starts with belief.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Steve, because I remember early on we would just do research like, okay, who else has gone through something like this? And every now and then you would run into a story that was just miraculous and amazing about somebody who was just like, you know, back from the dead, basically, and then completely living a total, complete life. And those stories, those really boosted us also, give us a lot of hope. Mm-hmm. And we even met people said, oh yeah, my sister's husband's whatever, you know, and so it's somebody they knew directly who had experienced something similar to that. Right. Those stories would just give us so much hope, you know, so I can see how that would play a big difference on the outlook of that.
And then I think the other part, which was wonderful with you guys, because you brought this to the party, we believe so much in team. So, you know, the name of our app is HomeTeams. And the whole concept, I like to say, it's not even an app, it's just the concept of HomeTeams, is that all this is easier as a team, right? And in many cases, we found now that we can create teams. We even did with you guys, we started creating a team around you. But you brought your own team. I mean, right from the beginning, Roman was very blessed, and it's partly because of your guys' family life and also your church. You had surrounded. I remember all the pictures, like even the video we did. Remember Roman, where it was like had all Roman's team, you know, they're all like, you know, Team Roman. I think they even had signs that Team Roman. And that helps, as you guys know as caregivers, so very much. If you're, you know, one of the things that we discuss all the time is that caregiving by yourself I mean, there's researches that caregiving by yourself is just one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing you can ever go through. But when you reposition it and it's a team, and you start looking at it as this position is, like I said, it's the greatest time in your life. Like someone the other day said, how do you say it's the greatest time of life? And I said, well, let's start out with the fact this is your only time in your life. So you got a choice of making it the greatest or making it miserable. But also, it is a great time. The things you're going to learn, the things you're going to go through, the way you're going to stretch your own emotions, your own physicality, everything is going to be the greatest time of your life. You know, I think back in sports, how hard we trained because we wanted to be in professional sports or whatever. And it was so important. And everyone knew it was so important because you were trying to be a professional athlete. Think how stupid that is compared to when you're fighting for your life. You know, when you're actually fighting your life, that might be a little bit more serious. But for some reason, people haven't positioned it in their minds how important that team is versus playing for University of Oregon or whatever it is. Playing within your own home team and creating those home teams. And I always say this because it's just true for a lot of people is they don't have a team, or sometimes they've messed up their team. Sometimes they've really screwed up their life and they don't have the relationships to have that team. But you can create a team. And it's the cool thing is that what you find, as you guys found, is like people come out of the woodwork to be part of Team Roman. Yeah. I mean, I remember those pictures and all those little kids, adults, everybody. It was fun.
All right, so we kind of talked about can't prepare for it, right? Things happen, that's just how life is. So going back, we talked about he had his initial accident. What did he look like initially as far as care? So you went to the hospital with him, you talked about that a little bit. Where was he at physically and mentally at that moment?
Well, he was literally just coming out of a coma at one point, you know, and then was in therapies at the hospital for a few weeks.
He had to learn how to eat again. He had to learn how to walk again. Mm-hmm. He could kind of talk. It's not like in the movies where you wake up and say, oh, hi. Not like that at all. So he had to relearn a lot of stuff. But luckily, he still had, some things were still there. Like his language was still there. He still remembers his Italian. But it just was mixed up, you know. And so, like, when he came home, so then, yeah, he was in the hospital. They ended the hospital stay with, 3 weeks of rehab. And then when he came home, he could walk and talk, but, you know, just, wasn't all there all the time.
And I remember his attention. Yeah. Remember his attention.
Yeah.
I mean, he was about, matter of fact, those guys, those experts we had on the video are the ones that noticed and told me about it, is that he'd have about 15 seconds to 30 seconds to max, but 15 seconds, and then he would look around like, where am I? You know, he was, short term was just gone. He didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Well, even coming up, because I didn't meet him until you guys brought him here for that first time, and I knew very little of his story, but I remember him coming up the stairs even. Remember his one arm really wouldn't move, we know, a normal gait pattern.
Help him up the stairs.
Yeah, help him up the stairs. I was actually the one that helped him with his first cognitive test that we ran, and I noticed right away he's not remembering even a previous symbol that was coming up, and then it was interesting to see his test results back from it. So I didn't know him, but I could see that there was definitely some cognitive issues. I can't imagine, I mean, I'm a parent myself. I can't imagine the emotion. How were you guys feeling during that? I mean, did you just go, we're taking it, the bull by the horns and we're getting after this? Or were you almost in shock for a second? Or, I mean, how?
It's a lot of things at the same time. You know, there's that side of you that's freaking out because you're like, oh my gosh, you know, what's happened to my kid and how is he going to end up? At the same time, you're like, okay, well, we don't have time to kind of wallow in our pity party. At the same time, we kind of have to roll up our sleeves and do what we can while we can, you know? And so it's just an everyday, constant battle, you know, of seeking out ways that, okay, what can help? In those early days in particular, a lot of time research, you know, online, looking for whatever kind of resource that might be able to help. One of the things that actually, I don't know if Verna found it online or it was a book she had, but is it J.J. Virgin? Is that her name? Virgin. J.J. Virgin. We found some kind of article from her and her son that had some kind of accident. And that laid out a bunch of different stuff with dietary, therapies, exercise, and alternative therapies like hyperbaric, you know. So we had an idea of like, okay, we need to start kind of gathering these things in place. And then from there, you just kind of see where the next resource is.
Well, and she was the one that talked about how the caregiver needs to be healthy, too, because she's a health person, if you guys know her name. But I think in the beginning, we're just so busy, you don't have time to think about anything but just taking care of him and doing what you need to do. I think one thing for me, like, I'm kind of naive with medical stuff, so in the beginning, the very beginning, I didn't even know how bad it really was, which I'm kind of grateful for, because I just didn't really know. But then after a few days of being in the hospital, you start putting things together and realizing things, because even the doctors didn't want to say much, because they don't even really know either. But then I started just coming to realize, like, okay, you know what, he's going to have some brain damage. You know, this is going to be something. But I didn't even know what that looked like either. But I remember when he was having an MRI in his brain or something, but then they came in to give us the results, and I was there by myself, and then they explained like his brain damage, and I was just like, okay, because I had time to prepare myself. And then it's just like, I'm kind of a worker and a fixer, so it's just like, okay, let's just do this. And we didn't know, nobody could tell you how he would be or how long it would take or anything, which I'm kind of glad for that too, because I think if they did, they would have said it wouldn't look good, which hasn't been the case. And so it's been easier to have extreme hope and just put the work in and just do it.
Yeah, just step by step. And you do get those guys, you have to almost ignore the naysayers, but it's hard when the naysayers are the experts, you know, and they're coming out, like I said, where they're saying like 85% of his return will be in the first 6 months. And when we first tested him on the cognitive test, you know, he was in the bottom 2%. And I think, I can't remember which neurologist I talked to, it was like, you're hoping to get him up into the 10-15% is what you should be hoping for. Which now he's at probably like 85-90%. You know, it's way up there. And so I knew with even my own sickness, when I was really sick, the naysayers, I mean, my gosh, I didn't want to hear them anymore. I didn't want to take another test because all the tests told me is how much worse I was getting. So, but that's an interesting point when you have to kind of ignore those people, or, and this is what I think the or is surround yourself with the people, the teammates, the people who are saying, all right, let's take it one step at a time. Let's go. Yeah. Rock and roll. Here we go.
You know, and honestly, that's one of the things that we love about Pacific Clinic. I mean, I'm sure, like you said, Roman has been an inspiration to so many, but it's really a two-way relationship. I mean, we feed off of your guys' positivity and your hope too.
For sure.
And I will say that, you know, when Cassie reached out, you know, on a whim saying, hey, we have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber here, we were like, oh my goodness, you know, here's another resource. And when we came, it just seemed like such a perfect fit. And as we got to know all the staff and, you know, both of you and everybody, this couldn't have been the most perfect place for Roman, honestly. And it has provided us with even more hope, you know, and more positivity, and has allowed us to just keep on going down that path of continued wellness and eke out any bit of improvement, even if it's 0.5%. You know, 0.5% is better than where you were yesterday. So it's been wonderful.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot out there for brain injuries, really.
Yeah.
But so when we found you guys finally gave us some hope. And when Roman started here, that's when he started consistent forward progression. Because up to that point, he'd kind of be like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you know, this and that. But then as soon as he started here, I could see a difference in him, and it was just his forward progression. And it's been slow, but it's still going, you know, it's still going. And so that's been great.
You said something really important, and I think a lot of people feel the same way that you did, which is maybe a little bit of being naive going into a medical, you know, office or hearing that. That's everybody. They say terms, and you're like, they said hypertension. What does that mean? Like, what is that? Simple things that people just take for granted for knowing, what they are. I don't think you're alone in that. So you're in this moment. Most people would feel that same way. What would you say, hey, this is your first step? Was it you went and found something online? I mean, internet is so accessible anymore. Did you go talk to somebody at the hospital and say, I don't get what you're saying. I need more info. Where did you start? Where would you recommend that people start to find those resources?
I think
online.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, I think for us at McKenzie Hospital there in Ogden, they're just so awesome. I can also give those guys, they deserve a shout out for sure. But since we were there so long, they kind of gave us an idea. It's like, okay, this is what you guys are going to be doing for the next year or so. Because we would ask those questions.
The typical therapies,
Yeah.
Speech therapy, physical therapy.
Get a neurologist.
The other therapy, I can't think of what it's called.
Occupational speech and physical.
Yeah. Find a physiatrist. That's what I said, you need a physiatrist. But that was in Utah. Then we come home to Washington, and we actually had the therapies were easy to find, but we had a hard time finding a physiatrist. So it's hard we kind of felt a little lost for a while.
I think that's the important part, and that's one thing that we really tried to implement, which is what we call our client advocates, which I'm sure you've experienced one of them in some way or another. And it's that people just don't know what to do. And so you need an advocate to kind of help you along and say, okay, let's get those resources. And I think that's my favorite thing about Steve is you can't find a physiatrist. I swear he'll find the top physiatrist that he's on the phone the next day with them. And I mean, that's the thing that's so cool. And that's why an advocate is so important. And that is one thing that we really implemented and have continued to advance, because you just don't know what you don't know until you're in that moment and you're like, oh my gosh, who do I go to? I can't find this physiatrist. Where do I go? And lucky, I mean, you're close to the Pacific Clinic and you had Steve as a resource, which is great. And the connection from Cassidy was helpful. But I think, like you said, the online stuff, there's a lot of resources out there, but talking to people, kind of drawing from other people's experiences seem to help you a lot. I think you guys should write a book about Roman's story.
We probably should. You definitely have. I appreciate that you bringing up the advocate side of it, because that is a huge help for sure. But throughout your journey, or this caretaking journey, sometimes you have to kind of just be your own advocate, And so the best thing I would recommend or counsel folks is just always ask questions. Just ask questions, and then eventually, you're going to get directed one way or another. And like, for example, we have a friend that has a daughter that works for the Brain Alliance of Washington State. So we got connected with her, and she kind of helped, and she was kind of our advocate there for a little while too. She was making phone calls and trying to find certain specialists for us. During COVID, it was really hard though. It really was. A lot of the main places that we would be referred to or recommended to were closed down at the time. Like the place at UW was a big one. It's like a really recognized one in the country actually. And in Spokane too, there's another place too that specializes in brain injury. But with COVID, it was all shut down. But it seems like there's one thing I work for the state. So I work at Department of Social and Health Services. So even though I work in the Community Services Division, I have friends that work like at Home and Community Services and in-home care. And so just knowing that there was that avenue as well, that really helped us tap into that side of the thing. So that's how we got kind of Verna's caregiving going for in-home care services. And then I was already familiar with Social Security and the services that they offer there. So that background that I have in that also helped quite a bit.
Yeah, there's resources from the state with help. With like, Javier, what was that? You were able to take 2-3 months off of work?
Yeah, so in
Family Care Act.
In 2020, there was actually a new program that had just been passed in Washington State. So not every state has it, but it's called the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, and it's through Employment Security, where an individual can apply to basically take time off work and get paid while they're off work. It's not your full salary. Right. It's kind of like unemployment benefits, but it's for medical emergencies, and you can take up to 12 weeks off. And so I was able to do that, plus my vacation and sick time that I had stacked up. I was able to take half a year off.
Which was, I'm sure, just absolutely a blessing for you guys.
Major.
Yeah, that was helpful. And then I was able to kind of go back to work at that time, but then when he had to start going back to work, I had to cut down my hours. So then Then we looked into me becoming a caregiver for Roman. So Roman qualified for caregiving hours. So I became a caregiver through the state and was getting paid to take care of him, which I was already doing, but that helped supplement my lost income.
And it was needed. He needed a caregiver.
Yeah.
What better person to help with that, and the financial burden is reduced.
So that was helpful.
Is that something you just applied to do? Is that?
Yeah, you just apply. He gets evaluated, and then you just have to do these 5 hours of class work. It's different for a family member. It's a lot less. You only have to do 35 hours of classes to become a family member caregiver. For not a family member, you have to do 70 hours. But you just, you apply, and they, if they have to qualify, you apply. You just have to do these first initial 5 hours of classes, and then you can start getting paid while you're working on the other 25 hour of classes that are mostly online. And they were interesting classes to learn about, too. I felt like I learned from them. And, we started that probably within that first year. But and they get reevaluated every year, which Roman just got evaluated in just a couple months ago. And he's doing so well, he doesn't qualify anymore.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
He does not qualify anymore, which is a good thing. That just shows his progress.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure back then, at the time, you probably thought, there were moments, this might be where he's going to end, right? He's not going to continue to get better. This might be kind of our rest of our life situation. So to have that happen is really a blessing, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, it was. And then he also qualified for disability income, which he gets, and so that helps, every little bit helps.
Sure.
So there's a lot of different little resources out there.
So kind of to give people an idea, because not everybody's been a caregiver, but they might be at some point in their life, whether it's for a child or somebody that is their parent or spouse. So you started off, he was needing a lot of assistance, right? He's not able to really eat on his own. He's walking, but not super well. Cognitively, I know he needed help with a lot of decision making and things like that. So walk us through what a typical day looked like for you as a caregiver. Was that a lot of planning between the two of you? Was that, one of you taking one role, the other role, blending it? What did that look like?
We were a really good team.
Yeah.
I feel like I did certain things, he did certain things. And again, I felt very fortunate that there was both of us to care for him. Some people it's their spouse, and they have to take care of kids too.
Yeah.
So again, there was just a kind of a tender little mercy right there with that, and it was helpful. I feel like we really took turns with doing different things. Like with the state, he did a lot of the paperwork and all that, which was just like at the time way too much for me. I don't even think I could have handled looking into that kind of stuff. But thank goodness he could do that, because then I could, it was more the one-on-one with Roman, helping him, doing stuff. So we really did.
Yeah. And we charted out everything in the beginning.
Yeah, he actually made
Tracking everything.
Yeah.
He made a big daily chart, putting in, just waking up,
Every half
eating.
hour was accounted for.
Yeah, nap time. He took a lot of naps in the beginning. And
Yeah, that was part of what he needed for his recovery, is a certain amount of rest.
So being organized, helpful, writing down what we want to do.
I also, I'm kind of proud of this one here. I charted out his morning routine. It was broken down into 5 different things, say a prayer, you go to the bathroom, you get ready, and you change, and then you go downstairs. So kind of 5 basic things. And I timed them all. And so I would talk to him about, it's like, okay, Roman, we're going to see if you can do this within 30 minutes. That's the goal, And I want to say the first one took almost an hour. I want to say 46, 47 minutes and stuff. But with him having that athlete background, I thought, he's going to be able to click with this, And so I would chart when it was PR, I'd do a plus or an up arrow, or a down arrow, and write his times and everything, so he could see everything, how he was doing. And then after a while, he was able to do it under 30 minutes, But those are just little things, again, that kind of help you kind of stay on track with what you're trying to achieve, as far as your outcome goes, and tracking it on a chart. For us, it's just what made sense, but definitely we tracked a lot, scheduled
I think the PR idea is so cool, and it's also, like it's a dopamine release for you as well. I mean, you're getting the relief, like something's happening, something's improving, and like I said, a caregiver by yourself, you're lonely, you're fighting it by yourself. When you get to share that, it's one of the things that we've done in our app is try to make it where, I mean, it's really easy to lay out everything that's going on for the week. And then you can see the different people picking it up, and just the encouragement when you see somebody else saying, "Oh, I can do that," and "I can do that," and then you watch someone have a fantastic day where they did 8 things for mom or whoever it was. But that it's a record one for Roman, like you're saying, PR, but it's also for the caregivers to be able to say, "Hey, we're winning this battle, aren't we? We won today. We had a good day."
It's a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
Because you almost kind of have some purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Purpose. There's our word. We like that word.
Yeah.
So now, him being cleared by the state, and I know that there's been some huge milestones he's had in this last year. I know that he's started driving again. He got a really cool award
Well, you
presentation.
gotta slow down on the driving though. Before you go, this always cracks me up because watching Rome go through like the different levels of getting better. There's 2 that stick in my mind that both just brought tears to my eyes. Is that one time I go into Regenerative and he says, "Steve, can I talk to you?" And I go over there and he just started. He's like, I'm doing better in all these things, but I'm not really. My short-term memory is bad, and I wanted. And he was just talking. And I go, "Roman, you're talking."
Yeah.
And he goes, "What?" And I go, "When you first came here, you could talk. And also, it's only been about a month and a half that you knew I was Steve when you'd see me. Otherwise, you'd see me and you didn't really know who I was." And I started, pointing out all the things, and both of us got tears in our eyes because, as you know, he doesn't always remember what it was like. Yeah. So he'll go like, "Was I really like that?" Yeah. And it was just like this really fun time. And then the other one, to the driving, I'm walking across our parking lot coming back here, and Roman drives by and waves. And I'm like, "Wait, what?" There's Roman. It was because I didn't know that he had got the chance to do that. And it was just, I walked back over here just in tears, just going, "There goes Roman driving out of the parking lot."
I actually don't think you came back here. I actually think you came and found me.
Did I?
And you went, "You know what? I just saw in the parking lot. Roman's driving."
That was
You came from your office?
Yeah,
he's
I was
excited.
so pumped.
He's excited if he walks all the way to my office to tell me something.
Because her office is in East Pasco.
Yeah, he always jokes its way over there.
Anyway, I had to throw that in there.
That was a good...
It's been a journey for sure. I mean, in those early days you're asking, I think for the better part of a year, I became I called myself his new missionary companion. Because, when he was on his mission for his church, you always have a companion that's with you.
Right.
Well, after this accident, I became his missionary companion because I slept in the bedroom with him for almost a whole year. Because in that first year, sometimes he would get up and wander, and he'd go out the door and we'd be like, "Oh, shoot, where's he going?"
Yeah, one time we couldn't find him for a little while and he was down the street. That was a little scary.
Yeah. So, and then plus his bedroom being on a second story and everything, it was like, okay, we're not going to take any chances. So, in those early days, I'd sleep in the same bedroom with him and, and be there for shower time and help him with whatever. And so to see his progress come to where he is now.
And after a while he was like, "Why are you sleeping in my bedroom?"
Yeah.
So,
There you go. Yeah.
so he, his progress was very slow and it was hard to see in the moment. But when you look back, you're like, "Wow, he has progressed."
Right.
Yeah, so sometimes you just have to hang in there day by day and just keep putting the work in.
And you have to enjoy, I like to call them waypoints more than goals. It's like it's like when you're hiking up a mountain and you're going up the trail, and every once in a while there's a clearing and you look out and you go, "Wow, we came from clear down there and we're going to go up there." And it's like just getting a chance to realize the journey. And also realizing, like, sometimes you've come up ways, but I got to go down over the creek to get back up higher. It's not always a straight going up a hill.
Right.
But those waypoints versus, like, I think sometimes people set themselves up with these goals and they hit a goal and then they it's goals in their own are limiting, is what I'm trying to get at. It's like, because you hit that and you're like, "I did it." No, you haven't done it. You're still climbing. You're still going. So I like to think of it as a waypoint. But thinking of that, I think is really important for caregivers, is to see the waypoints. You know, and to see the beauty of what's taking place. You know, not always is it wonderful stories of somebody getting better. Sometimes they're, you know, like with my mom and dad, where they're, you know, they got better by going to heaven, I guess. I mean, there's an end, right?
Right.
But still looking at that time and going, wow, this has been a beautiful journey. Is an important part of caregiving. You've got to be able to recognize that versus just keeping your head down all the time. I mean, obviously keeping your head down, working hard, but stop and look around.
You know, the other aspect about that, you know, you mentioned heaven, Steve. Without a doubt, I mean, having a faith in God for us has been probably forefront. I mean, there's no way I could share Roman's story without mentioning my Heavenly Father and his role in everything. And one of our beliefs is that, you know, things don't happen by accident, you know? And so through this journey, you know, one of the things that we kind of, well, that I do is I kind of take an inward look. It's like, okay, well, what is the purpose for this? You know, there's something for me to learn here. You know, I know this didn't happen by accident. You know, I know God's in charge and whatever will be is going to be, but Roman's still alive, I'm still alive, we're here on earth, and we have a chance to do something. What that is, we don't know, but we just can't say, kind of like what you mentioned earlier, is like, oh, well, I guess it is what it is now. Right. It's like, no, it's like, there's something. There's something that can be
brought
to fruition here.
Right, it's still purpose. It's like, you know, we were saying with, I always bring up the story with my mom, is that when she got life flighted out and then they didn't think she was going to live much longer. But what Mom and I were at the hospital where they life flighted us to, and we're sitting there and it's like, okay, but why are we still here? We're still here. And Mom's like, I am, aren't I? You know, it's like, wow, I guess I'm still here. So what is the purpose? And what are we going to do with this time? This is the greatest time we're going to have, you know, and looking at her over that next 10, 11 months, she thrived. Everything was great. I mean, she probably is more alive than any time I ever remember in my life. But it was because she recognized there was still purpose. She was still on this earth for some reason. What is it? And every day waking up going, what is it today? You know?
Yeah, it's interesting that you guys both said the why and the what word, because we just had general conference for our church, and 2 different people said, don't ask why, ask what. And, you know, in the beginning, Roman would always ask why, and so we would always try to, you know, change to, it's like, what? Ask what? So those are good, you know, ideas to keep in your mind. Yeah. Don't ask why, but ask what. What can I do? What am I here for?
Right. I think another aspect, too, in terms of faith is that, you know, we have been super blessed with Roman in that, you know, he's been fortunate that he's been improving, you know, even if it's been incrementally, it's improvement. And I recognize that not everybody has that same blessing of even getting a little bit of incremental improvements. But, you know, there were times, and sometimes he still experiences it now, not as much as before, but there are times where he would just hit kind of a rough patch. And there wouldn't be an improvement, and it would be really hard, you know. And I definitely recognize those times where you go through those hard times where there's seems like there's nothing happening. But I think, I guess what I want to share to that is that in those times I was still learning something. And one of the aspects, which might seem kind of weird with this podcast, is that the notion of suffering and grace. You know, there's certainly something to be said about suffering with grace. I don't know how else to explain or to put it, but in those moments, you come closer to God if your heart and your mind are in the right place. And there's no other way it could happen unless you're in that suffering mode, in that rut, you know, in that tough place. And so I guess I would say, you know, for anybody who feels like, well, I'm not getting that progress, or this is where I'm at, it's like, okay, well, maybe try to pause and see where you're at, and maybe think outside a little bit of yourself, a little bit in the bigger picture, and think, okay, well, maybe there's something else for me to be learning here.
Right.
You know, and it might not have to do necessarily with progress or improvement or whatever. It could be something else. And certainly there's an aspect of faith there. And that's where, you know, the perspective we come from. For sure.
Yeah, and it's huge. And it's like, and it's not, I think the one thing also for them to realize is that sometimes when you're in that valley, I mean, again, I'm always looking at this road. I had to go back through this valley to get higher. But in that valley, in the moment, sometimes you can't feel it. You can't feel it. You're like you're saying, like there's some other reason why this is happening. There's some other thing I'm going to learn from this. But while you're there, you can't feel it. But still having faith and believing, like you're saying, we tapped that believing sign in regenerative. Still having faith that there is a reason. And then when you come out of that valley or something starts to change, again, kind of a waypoint, you look back and go, wow, those 3 months, those 3 years, whatever it was such an incredible learning experience, such a growing experience that happened to me. I have this new relationship with this one person who helped me, whatever it is. Right. And all of a sudden it comes to reality, but don't get scared when you don't feel it. Yeah. You know, because that's what I like people to know, is because sometimes you just don't feel it. Don't get scared. Yeah. Just be at peace. You know, be at peace.
Well, I always say you can always find some good in the bad. So, you know, Roman was progressing and that was exciting, but then he started getting depressed. And that was hard, and that was a different, because at first, like, he kind of didn't know what was going on, and he was just kind of his happy little self. But then he started getting depressed, which was a sign of improvement, because he was realizing he was more there. He was realizing his situation. So even though that depression was very hard for him and for us to see, but it was still a sign of progress. And so sometimes you just have to look at things in a different way and, you know, and just, yeah. But he's been doing a lot better. You know, he's kind of like gotten through that. That kind of went on for a couple years, but he's been a lot better lately. And he had just, you mentioned earlier, his track team invited him back to practice with them for the week, and they had a meet. And at first he didn't want to compete, but his coaches wanted him to, so he did it, and he was okay with, he actually did pretty good, and he was okay with how he did, even though it wasn't, you know, as good as he had been. So it was good to see him know that he can do things not as well as he used to and be okay with it, you know, and have fun. And then they surprised him with renaming the meet after him, which was a huge honor. And that gave him a big morale boost.
That's
just
wow.
to see.
I was like, I've cried every time. I can only read the article.
You can't really mention that without me getting teary.
I know. That article came out, and I started to read it, and I went, I can't read it because I'm at work. I'll read it later. And then every time I read it, I've cried every time. Every time. It's absolutely beautiful. That's his what, though? I was going to say that was his what. Going back to it, I mean, the inspiration that he has played in so many people's life, that when I'm sure that's hard for him to recognize, but I see it clearly. I'm like, that's your what? Right. You know, forget about the why. This is, you are such an inspiration to people.
Yeah.
So.
And to yourself. I mean, the thing that I've tried to help Roman with a couple times, like you were saying with his emotions, is like, Roman, you're having emotions. You're actually having emotions now. You're actually feeling this, whereas a year ago, 2 years ago, I mean, I can't even remember how long we've been around each other here, but anyway, you weren't able to attach those emotions. And just having those emotions, it's like a new flower starting to grow. And yes, you're going to have to learn to control them and understand them a little bit better. And then the second part of that is just his ability to change, to compete against himself. You know what I mean? Against himself. So like at his track meet, to be able to go and just, you know, go after doing his very best. And if we could all learn that, you know, all of us in this world, we're always like trying to compare to everybody else and everything else people are going through. But our roads are our road. Yeah. You know, and our road is different. To compete and try to improve yourself, you know, is, I think, the thing that I've seen Roman kind of coming to. I don't think he's where he wants to be yet, obviously. Yeah. It's not where we all want him to be yet.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, have you guys I mean, you obviously have worked through these waypoints, using your word. Have you guys talked about long-term? Like, where does Roman want to be? Where do you guys envision Roman being in this long-term recovery? Because it's going to be a lifelong journey that he's going to have to go through. Have you guys talked about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I would say that we have been pretty optimistic in spite of the difficulty. I think that's another thing that, as caregivers, is important to try to kind of have some optimism, you know, just have that hope and that faith. And so, I mean, I still talk to him about like, hey, you're going to be a dad one of these days, and that's why you got to get better right now, So that kind of serves as a big time motivator for way down the road, right, for something that's going to happen. But then but that just kind of helps reset him. It's like, oh yeah, that's where I'm going, so I got to take care of this stuff right now. So those are like some things sometimes I mention to him stuff, but he wants to go back to school and college, and that was part of our goal as well. He really wants to be able to do something where he helps other people, because he recognizes that other people have helped him quite a bit through this journey. So I know he has those kind of desires. He's wanting to go to Italy again. He just
is that where he served his mission?
That's where he served his mission, is in Italy, and his old mission president is going back to Italy to serve for another 12 months over there. And we just met up with them a couple weekends ago, or last weekend, I guess it was. And I just asked, I go, hey, well, are you going to need some help over there? And he says, well, we probably could. And Roman's eyes just lit up. And so there's been a couple times where he says, well, I think I want to go ahead and do that. And so now we have to think of, one, can we do that? Are we at a good spot to do that? And then number two, the timing, But the point is that don't stop your life. It might take you a little while to get there, like schooling. He's been talking to us about schooling for at least a year now, but the timing just hasn't been quite right yet. And we're to the point now where we're going to start kind of embarking on that, and sometimes you have to take baby steps depending on the situation that you're encountering and stuff.
Yeah, like we're going to have him take just one class at CBC, see how that goes. Sure.
Yeah. Because he's ready to go full out, move out on his own, and go to BYU, is what he wants to do. But we're thinking, well, let's break it down a little bit and let's test this out. But that's probably another good thing to share too, is that he still gets frustrated to this day, even with what he's doing. And that's just a normal part of the journey. I think that's one thing I want to just emphasize with everybody, is that you're even as you're getting better and you've reached these waypoints, the frustrations and the disappointments, they're still going to be there and they're still going to come, but you have to power through it.
It's just kind of normal life for all of us.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have those moments right now, but it is a big difference understanding that. And I love that you guys have talked about the future stuff with him, that he has these goals and aspirations, waypoints that he wants to get to. That's phenomenal. And it really does help with those incremental changes and progression that you've been seeing. So that's great.
And we've been talking about just me and Verna, but I will say his siblings have been amazing too. All his brothers and his sister, they're like, you can do this, Roman. You can do this. Like, they believe in him, and they know that if there's one person that could do it, he could do it.
That's pretty cool.
And so he knows he's got that backup.
I think, we've known you almost 4 years now was the timeline. That was the timeline you're trying to come up with. And I think, as Steve and I have worked on kind of creating HomeTeams and the different supporting apps that go along with it, you've hit on a couple really key points that I think that we have taken. Little did you know, we're like, hey, we learned this information, is the team aspect. We knew how important it was, but watching you guys with your community, watching everyone rally and Team Roman, we're like, wow, that is so impactful. Watching the two of you work together and helping, with all the tasks that he had, we're like, how could we help with that? Seeing your journey as caregiver working now and doing all this stuff with him, it made us really realize what were the resources that were needed. It's not just the task, it's the communicating back and forth, it's the dopamine releases, seeing the team working together, but it's also those resources. And so for me today, I even got reminded of, hey, those are some things that we could include in the library of HomeTeams that people may need. We just kind of forget about those things because we try to cover all the bases, but until you hear it from somebody who's actually been in it, I'm like, oh, we could add that piece because someone might need that quick little resource that they didn't think about. Family medical leave, and that you can become the caregiver. I mean, those are really helpful resources. So.
I think it's definitely about trying to build momentum however you can. I think of little gears, if you have little gears that are turning and you have another gear that connects to it, it turns it, and then another gear and another gear. And after a while, you have all these different gears all moving together, creating this momentum. And, it might take like so many of these gears to cause momentum just to get 1% improvement. But 1% is 1%. That's right. And if you just keep on going down that road, well, 1% will eventually turn into 2%.
Yeah, and in some cases, like a lot of people we deal with have are in a degenerative disease. And so, like I was with a bunch of neurologists just even last week, but one of the things that they'll say, I've heard at least 3 or 4 times, in our regenerative therapy where you're doing the SSR and you're doing the breathing, they said, what is the percentage of gain that they have? And my answer is always, I have no idea. Because the thing is that it depends on who they are. There's so many variables, but the point is that it's pointed in a positive direction. Right. And there is gain, and it comes down to, and that was why your guys' story is so inspiring, is that we always say, you're going to get as good as you want to fight to do. And that's hard sometimes to say that to somebody who has a degenerative disease, but we watch people all the time that are on a curve like this, that then the curve's like this, and then the curve is actually came up a little bit, and all that is positive. Yeah. We're all on a different mission, we're all going through different things, but are you aiming in a positive direction? And are you going to fight today, this very day? And that's the one thing I've talked to Roman about many days is that okay, live today. Yeah. Today, right now, I walk by and say, Roman, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm doing the bike. Are you? Because I'm watching you and you're not. If you're going to go after it, today's the day that matters. This very single day, are you going to fight as hard as you can today? And getting up with that in the morning, and whatever disease you're facing or whatever you're facing in life as a caregiver, because caregiver, it's your one life too. So what you're facing today, are you gonna make this the greatest day you've ever lived so far? Because that's what matters. And then, like we always say, because next week's going to be even greater. But you got to fight it one day at a time.
Yeah. So if you guys could offer one final piece of advice to someone who might be in the same situation in the future, what would you say that is? What's one piece that you could say, here's my little bundle?
I think for me, I kind of have 2, and one is to keep yourself healthy. The caregiver definitely needs to stay healthy, take little breaks to do things for yourself. And then the other is like not worry about the future too much, but just focus on today, because you don't always know what the future is going to be like, and or just have extreme hope for the future, whatever that's going to be, but more just focus on today and not worry about the future, because it'll come what it is.
Yeah, and for me, I'd say just if you're a person of faith, have that be number one. I mean, God has been forefront for me and for us throughout this whole process. Just knowing that God has a plan for you, and it hasn't been just decided on a whim. There's a purpose behind it, and if you can recognize, whatever situation you might be going through, that there's a purpose behind it, and that kind of helps, kind of just settle you and ground you. It's like, okay, we can do this, wherever this road might lead, I'm going to see this to the end. So having that faith has been number one for me. And then I would say number 2 is that I always look also, it's like, is there somebody else that can benefit from this situation? You've probably seen the video that Roman has on YouTube. It's called Roman, A Year of Miracles, and it's on YouTube.
Made me cry.
And I'm not kidding. I shared that video. I probably shared it like just a couple weeks ago with somebody at hot cold therapy the other day. But I share that video every time I get a chance with anybody, And my idea for that is twofold. One is kind of selfish, but the selfish part is that I know that almost anybody that will watch that video will say a prayer for my son. And that means a lot to me. So there's that selfish point. But the number 2 point, though, is that, what? If you are ever going through something hard, just know that you can do it and you can overcome. You can overcome. So it's kind of a twofold purpose. Yeah. But I would say those 2 things for me has really what keeps me going.
Well, this has been fantastic having you guys here, and I managed to not cry too much today, which is impressive for me. I guarantee the producer and I were talking back and forth, Cassie, and we're like, we're going to cry later when we listen to this podcast. I mean, this was great today. You guys have such amazing advice for people. I know that you guys will inspire more people. Every time someone hears your story, it's inspiring. Roman is an inspiration to me. Personally, I didn't make it. I'm crying already. Is an inspiration. So I appreciate you guys coming on and just giving us kind of your perspective perspective on things, it's truly amazing. So,
Well, thanks for having us. I mean, you guys have been a huge part of Roman's recovery, like the main part.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't have done it without you guys, for sure. And this is like our second home here.
I would say you're here almost as much as I am. Every time I come around, like, Verna's working out again.
You guys really.
Yeah, I want to echo the same thing as far as what Verna said, as far as Pacific Clinic and you guys and Coach Steve and everything being the main part. We've done a lot with Roman. I mean, you can only cover so much in an hour, out of a 4-year span, right? We have done a lot with him. I mean, a lot. We've done stealth stem therapies and neurochiropractors and specialists here, specialists there, whatever. But I'll be honest with you. Out of everything that we've done, if I had to choose one thing for him to do, it would be Pacific Clinic. Out of everything we've done, and we've done a lot. And the reason why is because Coach Steve brings a lot of cutting edge stuff to Pacific Clinic that you're not going to find anywhere else. And that's always a good, awesome benefit to have, because it's stuff that you don't necessarily get told about when you're at the doctor's or at the hospital. They're not talking about these things. So that's really awesome. But just the energy here at all Pacific Clinic. I mean, I even feel it when I walk through the door and say hi to Nicole. I mean, you just feel it instantly. There's something positive here happening. And that kind of, to me, touches on my beyond the physical part, more on the faith part of things. And that creates a positive energy. And that positive energy, I think, it envelops your soul. And that stuff helps heal you also from a physical standpoint.
Yeah, it's not just the therapies here, it's the people here, too.
Exactly. So just a shout out to you guys and everything that you've done. And I could definitely say that Pacific Clinic has been our main partner throughout this whole process. And if I had to choose one partner out of all the different ones, this would definitely be it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I was just going to say thank you. Try and make me cry again. Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of HomeTeams Talk. Make sure to follow us on our YouTube channel and find us on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any episodes. We'll see you next time.